My parents skipped my wedding to fly to Dubai with my brother. Not a family emergency, not a tragedy, a boutique opening, a ribbon-cutting ceremony with investors and champagne. And they chose that over watching their daughter get married. So I asked my husband's father to walk me down the aisle instead. He said yes before I finished the sentence. He went to 3 different stores to find a tie that matched my flowers. And on the morning of my wedding, he straightened his shoulders at those doors, placed my hand on his arm, and walked me down like I was the most important person in that building. The documentary crew filmed every single second of it. We posted it, not for revenge, not for attention, just because it was ours, and it was real, and it was beautiful. 14 million people watched it in 1 week, and 4 days after it went viral, my phone showed 93 missed calls. From my parents, the same 2 people who were posting Dubai sunset photos while I stood in a bridal suite, in my wedding dress, with no father in sight. 14 million strangers saw exactly who showed up for me that day. And that is the only reason my mother now leaves a voicemail every single Sunday, on a phone I no longer rush to answer. Stay with me, because this story starts 2 weeks before that wedding, with a phone call I never should have picked up. My name is Tori, and for 31 years, I was the invisible child. Not unloved exactly. That's the part that makes it complicated. That's the part that kept me confused for 3 full decades. My parents weren't cruel people. They didn't forget birthdays or miss school plays on purpose. They simply had a compass. And that compass always pointed toward my brother Preston. Preston was the golden one, the charming one, the one whose failures got reframed as learning experiences and whose dreams got funded without a single question asked. When Preston dropped out of college his junior year to explore entrepreneurship, my father flew out to meet him and called it brave. When I graduated with honors 2 years later, full scholarship, dean's list, my parents sent flowers and a card. They couldn't make the ceremony. Preston had a pitch meeting in Austin that weekend. I told myself it was fine. I understood. That word, understood, became the load-bearing wall of my entire childhood. Every missed recital, every holiday cut short, every phone call that somehow circled back to Preston's latest venture. I understood. I was the stable one, they said, the strong one, the one who didn't need as much. And I believed them. For 31 years, I believed that needing less was the same thing as being loved enough. Then I met Liam. Liam Carter walked into my life at a friend's backyard cookout on a humid July evening, holding a plate of food he'd made for a stranger. Me. Because he noticed I'd been standing in line for 20 minutes and never made it to the front. That was Liam. Quietly observant, quietly kind. His family was everything mine wasn't. His father, Raymond, was a broad-shouldered, soft-spoken man who coached Little League on weekends and remembered the names of everyone his kids ever dated. His mother, Janet, was the kind of woman who pressed a warm mug of tea into your hands before you even realized you were cold. The first time I had Sunday dinner at their house, I cried in my car afterward for 20 minutes. Not from sadness, from something I couldn't name at the time. I know now what it was. It was grief. For every Sunday dinner I'd spent feeling invisible in my own home. Liam proposed on a Tuesday morning, in our kitchen, in our pajamas. No grand gesture, no audience. He just slid a ring across the breakfast table and said, "I want you to be my family." I said yes before he finished the sentence. We set the date 14 months out. I wanted time. I wanted everything to be right. Not extravagant, just ours. A venue with string lights and wildflowers, a dress with long sleeves and a low back, and a documentary crew because Liam's cousin worked in film and offered to capture the day as a wedding gift. A real, honest, documentary-style record of everything. We said yes, not thinking much of it. We had no idea what that camera would eventually show the world. The fittings, the tastings, the seating charts. I handled most of it with Janet at my side. My own mother was busy. Preston's Dubai boutique, a luxury clothing concept he'd been developing for 2 years, was consuming every ounce of my parents' energy and attention. I understood, I told myself. I understood. 12 days before the wedding, I was standing in Janet's living room. She was carefully pinning my mother's antique lace veil into my hair, a veil my mother had worn at her own wedding, had passed down to me with what I thought was meaning. When my phone lit up on the coffee table, Mom, I should have let it ring. 31 years of conditioning answered for me. Tori, honey. No hello. No how's the veil fitting. Just the voice I'd spent a lifetime rearranging myself to please. Your father and I have talked this through. Preston's boutique launch falls on your wedding weekend. The investors are flying in from 4 countries. He needs us there. We're going to Dubai. I stood perfectly still. The veil felt suddenly very heavy. What about my wedding? I heard myself say. My voice came out like it belonged to someone else. Someone very far away and very young. Tori, don't be dramatic. You have Liam's whole family there. We'll do a dinner when we're back and somewhere really nice. Preston needs his family right now. Preston needs his family. Not, you are our family. Not, you need us too. Just, Preston needs. And Tori will understand. Okay, I said. And I hung up. Janet set down the veil pins. She didn't say a single word. She walked across the room and held my shoulders, both hands firm and steady, and she just held me until I could breathe again. I didn't cry. I'd spent so many years training myself not to cry over them that the tears had learned to stay. But something else happened in that moment, standing in Janet's living room with an antique lace veil in my hair and my future mother-in-law's hands on my shoulders. Something shifted. I decided quietly and completely that I was done rearranging myself to fit into spaces my family refused to hold open for me. I made one phone call that night, to Raymond, Liam's father. I know this isn't traditional, I told him, and I know it's a lot to ask. He stopped me before I could finish. Tori, he said, his voice low and steady, I already bought a new tie. The morning of my wedding was a Saturday in late September. The air had that particular quality that only exists on perfect autumn mornings, cool and gold and impossibly still. I woke up at 5:47 a.m. and lay in the dark for a while, taking inventory of how I felt. I thought I'd feel the absence like a wound. I thought I'd spend the morning fighting back grief for the parents who chose a boutique opening over their daughter's wedding day. Instead, I felt something I hadn't expected. I felt free. The venue was a restored farmhouse about 40 minutes outside the city, wrapped in old oak trees and string lights. The documentary crew was already there when we arrived, moving quietly, cameras unobtrusive, capturing everything without disrupting anything. The bridal suite smelled like eucalyptus and old wood. My bridesmaids moved around me in a warm, laughing current of energy. Janet sat in the corner chair, watching me with the soft, full expression of a woman seeing something beautiful. At 11:15, there was a knock on the door. It was Raymond. He was wearing a deep navy suit, and the tie. A silk tie in the exact color of my wedding flowers, pale ivory and gold. He'd gone to 3 stores to find it, Liam told me later. 3 stores, because he wanted it to be right. He stood in the doorway, and he looked at me in my dress and his eyes went glassy. You look like someone worth showing up for, he said quietly. I almost lost it right there. He offered me his arm, formal and steady, the way a father offers his arm. And I took it, and we walked. I want you to understand what the cameras captured in the next 4 minutes. They captured Raymond straightening his shoulders as we approached the aisle. They captured the moment the doors opened and the music swelled and 300 people stood. They captured his hand, large and certain, covering mine on his arm. They captured him leaning slightly toward me and saying, just barely loud enough for the mic to catch, every step you take down this aisle, you are completely surrounded by people who chose to be here. I walked down that aisle with my chin up and my eyes full and my heart breaking and healing at the exact same time. Liam was waiting at the end, and when he saw me, when he saw his father walking me, his eyes went from proud to overwhelmed in the space of a single second. He pressed his fist to his mouth. His best man put a hand on his shoulder. Raymond placed my hand in Liam's. He leaned in and said something to him, quietly, privately. And Liam nodded once, jaw tight with held emotion. Later, Liam told me what his father said. Take care of her like she's never been taken care of before, because she deserves to know what that feels like. The ceremony was 34 minutes long. It was the most honest 34 minutes of my life. We had written our own vows. Liam went first. He said, I used to think love was something you had to earn. Then I met you, and I realized that the right kind of love doesn't keep score. It just keeps showing up. I will keep showing up for you every single day, for the rest of my life. That is my only promise. But I intend to keep it completely. I said, I spent a long time believing I was someone who needed to take up less space, ask for less, expect less, feel less. You made me understand that I was wrong. I don't want to need less anymore. I want to need you, loudly, fully, without apology. And I want to spend our whole lives being someone you're proud to have needed back. There wasn't a dry eye in that farmhouse. The cameras caught all of it, every single second. Liam's cousin edited the wedding documentary in 8 weeks. She called it, Someone Worth Showing Up For. Raymond's words from the hallway. When she sent us the final cut, Liam and I watched it alone in our living room on a Tuesday night, takeout containers between us, not expecting much. We were crying by the 4-minute mark. By the time Raymond walked me down the aisle. By the time that camera caught his hand over mine, and his voice sang, "Every step you take," I was completely undone. It was honest. It was human. It was the kind of footage that makes you feel like you're watching something private and sacred and deeply, universally true. Liam's cousin asked if she could post a short version, just the aisle walk and the vows, on her production company's page. We said yes. We didn't think twice. Within 6 hours, it had 400,000 views. Within 24 hours, it had crossed 2 million. By the end of the first week, 14 million views and climbing. The comments were unlike anything I could have prepared for. The way his father straightened his shoulders before those doors opened. I am not okay. Every step you take, you are surrounded by people who chose to be here. I need to sit down. Whoever's parents skipped this wedding, I hope they're watching this. I hope it hurts. That last one had 47,000 likes. I didn't post anything about my parents. I didn't name them. I didn't explain the backstory in the video. I didn't have to. The footage spoke with a clarity that no caption ever could. But the internet, 14 million people who'd watched Raymond walk me down that aisle with more tenderness than my own father had ever shown me, they understood exactly what they were seeing. A daughter who had been left, and a family who had refused to let her stand alone. My parents landed back in the States on a Wednesday. By Thursday morning, my phone had 31 missed calls. By Friday evening, at 58. By Saturday night, 93. I know the exact moment they found the video. My aunt, my mother's younger sister, who has never once in her life managed to keep information to herself, sent it to the family group chat with the caption, "Has anyone seen this?" Followed immediately by, oh no. Followed immediately by, nothing, because she deleted both messages 40 seconds later. But 14 people had already read them. I didn't answer a single call. Not because I was performing silence. Not because I was constructing some elaborate punishment. I didn't answer because for the first time in 31 years I genuinely had nothing to say. Every word I'd ever swallowed, every "I understand" I'd offered as sacrifice, I had nothing left to offer them. The well was dry. My mother left voicemails. The first ones were sharp, defensive, almost insulted. How could you let strangers film something so private? Do you know how this makes us look? People are saying terrible things about your father. Then they shifted. Tori, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We always intended to celebrate with you properly. We just needed you to be flexible this once. 31 years, this once. By the second week, the voicemails were different again. Softer. Fractured at the edges. My mother's voice doing the thing it only does when she's genuinely, unavoidably cornered by her own choices. I watched the video, Tori. I watched it 4 times, and I just need you to know that I didn't understand what it looked like from the outside. I didn't know. I really didn't know. I sat with that for a long time. She didn't know. Maybe that was true. Maybe she had spent so many years being certain that Tori would understand that she'd never once stopped to ask what understanding was costing me. But not knowing doesn't undo the debt. It just explains how it accumulated. I did eventually respond. Not to 93 calls worth of urgency, but on my own timeline, in my own way, through a single letter. Written by hand. No drama, no accusations. Just truth, stated plainly. I told them what the word understood had meant in our family. I told them how many times I'd used it as a bridge across a gap they kept making wider. I told them I was happy, genuinely, fully happy, and that my happiness had been built almost entirely by people who shared none of our blood. I told them that I loved them. I also told them that love, on its own, is not enough. Love without presence is just intention. And intention doesn't walk anyone down the aisle. I told them the door wasn't closed. But I told them I would not be the one to keep knocking on it. Raymond still calls every Sunday. Not because anything happened, just because that's what he does. He asks about the apartment, about work, about whether Liam remembered to get the car looked at. Small things. Ordinary things. The things that are, I've learned, the actual texture of being loved. Janet and I are doing a pottery class on Tuesday evenings. She is absolutely terrible at it and completely unbothered by that fact, which I find deeply comforting. Liam still shows up. Every single day without fanfare. A cup of coffee before I ask. A hand on my back when a room feels too loud. The particular way he looks at me when I think no one is watching. My parents and I are somewhere in the careful, slow process of rebuilding something. I don't know yet what shape it will take. I think I'm done trying to predict it. Some things you have to build without a blueprint. One honest conversation at a time. The video is still out there. 14 million views and a comment section full of strangers who watched a borrowed father straighten his tie and walk someone else's daughter down the aisle. And felt, for a moment, that the world contained more tenderness than they'd remembered. I think about that sometimes, about how many people watched that footage and recognized themselves in it. The ones who had been left, the ones who had understood for too long, the ones who had learned, the hard way, that chosen family isn't a consolation prize. It's just family. Here is what I want to leave you with. The people who are supposed to show up for you don't always. Sometimes they're busy. Sometimes they're distracted. Sometimes they've simply decided over and over again that someone else's need is louder than yours. And here is the thing no one tells you. You are allowed to stop making yourself smaller to fit inside their priorities. You are allowed to let someone else walk you down the aisle. You are allowed to let the world see exactly who showed up and who didn't. You are allowed to be someone worth choosing, even before the people who were supposed to choose you first finally figure out what they lost. Raymond didn't walk me down that aisle to make a point. He walked me down that aisle because someone needed to, and sometimes that is the whole story. Before you go, I want to ask you something honestly. Have you ever been the person in your family who was always expected to just understand? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. You never know who's been waiting for permission to stop understanding and start choosing themselves. I'll see you in the next one.